In the spring of 2014, Eugene Albert Stauch, who went by Al for obvious reasons, was on a co-ed softball league, and that is where he met Letecia Lynn Harden. The two started dating, and within a year they were married. They formed a blended family. Letecia had a daughter, Harley, who was 12 at the time, from a previous marriage, and Al had two children from a previous marriage, a little girl named Lena, who was only 2, and a little boy named Gannon, who was 6. Al was in the Army, and Letecia was a teacher at schools that don't do background checks or contact references. A little bit after the marriage, Al was deployed to Alaska, and they all moved to Alaska. Letecia did not like Alaska, so she made false claims of assault against some of the men in Al's unit. They eventually moved from Alaska. They moved to Colorado Springs, and they lived there as a family for a while. And on January 25th of 2020, Al was deployed to Oklahoma with the National Guard. Letecia stayed home with the children. 2 days later, on January 27th, Letecia called 911, and she told dispatch that her son Gannon, who is 11, is missing. She says that she thinks he's a runaway. He ran away. She kind of downplayed it a little bit. Not an emergency. So the cops rocked up a couple hours later because it wasn't an emergency. And they noticed that there were already kind of like a little impromptu search going on, they thought. People in the neighborhood must have heard. And Letecia told them that she did her own kind of preliminary search. She spoke to some of Gannon's friends and their parents and some neighbors. And when the police asked her for names and addresses, she drew a blank. She could not provide those. She said that she thinks that he's gotten involved with a new group of friends, some boys that might be a little older in his school, and drugs might be at play. So, Letecia said a lot of stuff, and I can't get into all of it because we'll be here forever, and it's all bullshit, so it doesn't really matter. The gist of it was she found something in his backpack, rolling papers or something, and a text that was kind of sus, and a search on his phone saying, "Can my parents find me if my cell phone is off?" That kind of thing. Letecia saw that this, again, his disappearance was getting a lot of attention, especially in social media, and I guess she didn't want Al to hear this from someone else, so she called him and tried to downplay the situation as much as possible. But guess what? Al wanted to come home, and he did. He went straight to the airport and took the next flight in. And on the morning of January 28th, Letecia picked him up at the airport in a rental car. And Letecia had a car. And Al said to her, "Why are you in a rental car? You have a car." And Letecia said that she didn't want to put all of the miles that they're going to use when they go on the search that she's not going on onto her leased car. So she rented a car. Didn't make sense to Al, but he wanted to go straight to the investigators and find out what's up and what's new and what's going on. He was obviously very worried. Gannon had been missing overnight by now. Letecia dropped him off at the station. I guess, I don't know what their plan was, but she was like, "See ya." And he went in and spoke to detectives, and they kind of got caught up. He asked if there's anything new. They asked if Letecia was going to join him a few times, and eventually either he called her on her cell, I guess, and she wasn't interested. He was like, "Why don't you come? We can get on the same page. We can talk to the detectives together." Nah. When he hung up, he told them that Letecia is a firecracker, and I think that was his way of making excuses for her horrible personality. Al is a very good guy, and I don't think he wanted to throw shade at his wife. He left. He wanted to get boots on the ground and start his own search, his own investigation. He wanted to find his little boy. But he returned a few hours later to speak with investigators again. And when he was waiting for them to come into the interview room, you could hear him say under his breath, "Oh Lord, please say it isn't true." Because Al Stauch had started to put the pieces together. And as he did that, everything fell apart. He went by the school that she said her car was parked, and it was not there. And that's when he started to think, and things started to come to him. He didn't even know where to start. And he realized that the call is coming from within the house. And that is the most terrifying feeling in the world. Later that day, Gannon's biological mother, Landon, came in to look for him. And Letecia was supposed to pick her up at the airport, but just pulled a no show. Letecia wasn't around much. No one really knew where she was. Landon and her mother stayed with Al and Leticia's home because he figured that's the best way. This way they can be together through this and hear whatever news might come out together. And this way she doesn't have to pay for a hotel. Letecia did not like this plan, and she was very jealous, and she felt that Al was cheating on her with Landon. That's what he's doing. Their son is missing, and he's turning it into a romantic rendezvous. She used this as an excuse not to go home that night and not to get involved in any of the efforts or any of the anythings. She'll say as much in an interview she does, but we'll get to that in a little bit. That night, Al and Landon have a press release, and they speak to the public and, of course, beseech anyone who knows anything to come forward and please return their son home safe. They thank the community because the community had stepped up in a really big way. There were a lot of searchers, there were a lot of people offering to different resources. Letecia had gotten a call from a woman who has a cadaver dog company, but she never really did anything with that call. She never called her back. She never forwarded her number. She was not looking to. Last thing Letecia needed was a cadaver dog nosing around. The whole neighborhood was blue because Gannon's favorite color was blue. They had blue lights, blue balloons, everything. It was very, very touching, but Gannon was still missing. Letecia had been avoiding law enforcement, but on the 29th, she had no choice but to go and speak to two female detectives. She was wearing the ugliest jacket I have ever seen. This was a long interview, and in it, Letecia gave not the first of her lies, but the first of her intricate, completely embarrassing lies. And also, why do we have to be the ones who are embarrassed for these people? How come they're never embarrassed themselves? That's their job. I mean, why did we have to sit there and get embarrassed because of all of Chad Daybell's sexts in court? He was fine. What's wrong with these people? Anyway, she tells them the upshot. Again, I'm not going to go into too many details because they're not really details. That a guy who she had hired, some local construction worker, to fix her carpet because her carpet in the basement had gotten burned. That in itself is a story that we don't need. And when he came in, he raped her and kidnapped Gannon. That's the gist of it. She gave him two names for this guy, two totally separate names, totally separate people. At this time, I think she was just working with the name Eduardo. She gave a vague description of him, and not soon after, she would also start throwing around the name Quincy Brown. Quincy Brown was a criminal fugitive in the area at that time. Letecia, much like Sarah Boone, will also, when the heat is really on, she will throw sodomy in just to kind of, I guess they figure no one wants to talk about that. That'll end all the questions and that'll just, okay, relax. They ask her if she wants to take a sexual assault kit test. Ultimately, she declines. She pretends she's going to, but nah, she's good. Thanks. She says the reason she didn't come forward with this story is that she was scared that Al was going to be mad at her. Because you see, Al, and this will be a thread throughout this, and that thread is that Al is very controlling. He has a bad temper, and she is scared of him. That was why she didn't know a lot of his friends, because Al controls all that. He does everything with his kids. She does everything with hers. She doesn't. They don't want her involved. She was worried that Al was going to be angry at her for being raped, and I mean, more likely he was going to be angry at her for lying about being raped again. Anyway, the heat gets hot. They're talking about a sexual assault exam, and Letecia pees on herself and pretends to start having chest pains. She's practically taken out on a gurney. These two paramedics come and they bring her to the hospital with her ugly jacket. I picture that this didn't happen, but I picture one of the female detectives picking up the jacket and being like, "Take that with you." She wore it out though. That was the 29th. On the 31st, Letecia did that impromptu interview with the local reporter. She had her back to the camera, Chandler Halderson style, and her mission statement was basically, everyone's going to owe me a big apology when Gannon is back safe. And she mentioned that her husband's ex-wife is staying in her home and she's not welcome there and not welcome to take part in any of the efforts to find Gannon. So that's why she hasn't been involved in them. On February 1st, Letecia, whose car had since been seized, rents a van and starts driving with Harley to South Carolina, where they have family. And on the drive, they stay at different hotels. They basically go from the driver's seat and passenger seat straight to the hotel, order food to be delivered in, and that's it. Car, hotel, car, hotel. No changing clothing, just going. And the night that they're in Florida, Letecia must have left the room in the middle of the night and driven to Pace, Florida, which is right near Pensacola, and dumped Gannon's body over a bridge in a suitcase. Gannon's body had been in that van the entire time, and Harley did not know it. On February 21st, the search was suspended. And Gannon's case had already been upgraded from a runaway. I mean, like 2 days later, it was upgraded from a runaway to a missing endangered child. It was handed over to the El Paso Sheriff's Office and eventually, of course, the FBI. On March 2nd, Letecia was arrested and charged with murder in South Carolina. 2 days later, she got some more charges because while being extradited back to the jail in El Paso, she attacked one of the deputies with a can of Monster energy drink. Now, here's where I start to ask a very common question in these situations. What would she have done if she escaped? I mean, I'm sure she didn't have a plan. That's a given. But she can't even be confronted by authorities without peeing on herself. How is she going to live on the lam? And also, if you wanted to be free that badly, first of all, you could have put some effort into looking like you were trying to find your stepson, not all of the effort in when it's like balls to the wall and you have to attack deputies with cans of energy drink. I mean, if you wanted to stay free that badly, it's very easy. Don't kill anyone. That's all. Simple equation. Don't kill, stay free. I mean, if I haven't killed anyone yet, there is no excuse. None. On March 11th, Letecia is formally charged with murder. On March 17th, Gannon's body is found. He's found by bridge workers who are inspecting the bridge. It was an inspection that happens once every 2 years. There's no water under that bridge, so they would just come check it out. And luckily, they checked it out that day. On March 20th, they made the public announcement. Again, his body had been identified, and Letecia was charged with first-degree murder, and other aggravators, child abuse to the point of death, things like that. She would also catch charges about a month or two later when they found her escape plans in her cell. She was planning to knock out the window and shimmy through it. It was like this. I don't know. She wants to be free. She wants to be free. That would have gone great too. She pleads not guilty. And so there are a few things I want to get into here because that was just the tip of the tip of the tip, if you will. That's just the broad strokes. So she pled not guilty originally, and then she changed her plea to not guilty by reason of insanity. So there's that, and that is when the horror show becomes a shit show. But before that, she so the FBI gets involved and they are monitoring. This is up until uh, her arrest. They're monitoring her and Al's phone calls, and Al is trying to get some information from her. He's, they're kind of coaching him and telling him what to do, and he actually did a really good job because, I mean, if it was up to Landon, she would have just gone and killed her with her bare hands. So they recorded a lot of those calls, and we'll listen to some of them, like just little pieces, because they are unbearable. She's insufferable. She is just, ugh, you know. Throughout those calls, the only thing she's focusing on is at first she's a little bit carrying on about how she felt neglected and she wasn't, which is also when Al was on his way uh, to come look for Gannon. She was texting him about how she feels neglected and she's taken for granted. I mean, so in these calls, she is focusing on getting immunity. At first, she doesn't call it immunity because I guess she thought that would look suspicious. She's calling it protection, and she's saying how her whole family is getting threats. She also, I think, told the reporter that. And she told those two detectives, everyone, people want to kill her. Even her Aunt Brenda was being threatened. She alludes to the fact that this whole thing is bigger than anyone knows. This is worldwide. This is cartels. This is kingpins. This is large organizations, criminal organizations. She knows things that she can't just reveal just because Al wants his son back, This is big, big, big. When she sits down with the FBI agent, she's talking straight immunity. That's all she's trying to, and her double talk, it's kind of interesting I mean, we see a lot of it in these things. So, but it's interesting to see how these people navigate around a conversation and how they, like Letecia, especially on a lot of the calls, but in general, when she's, backed up against the wall and she creates like a wall of sound that you cannot permeate with a question or a comment. She is so poorly behaved and so transparent and so stupid. When she starts to change after she changes her plea to not guilty by reason of insanity, she starts acting insane. And you can hear this on a lot of her jail calls. She'll talk. At one point, Letecia finds a fake polygraph website, and she decides she's going to pay for it and take it and prove to the world that she's not lying, which is stupid all around for every single possible reason. She takes it. You make up your own questions, of course. It's for like if your spouse thinks, I don't know what it's for. It's idiots doing stupid things. Um, and she makes up the questions and she calls them a few times, and this British fellow answers. And she wants to know why she hasn't gotten the results yet and why she hasn't gotten it yet. And eventually he explains to her, because he looks at the questions, that, it's okay if it's like, did I cheat on my husband? But it's not okay if it's like, did I kill a child? So she asks for her money back, which is balls. And he's like, nah. And eventually she just hangs up because she's got to start googling things, and we'll get to that in a second. So in some of her phone calls with Al, I guess, I don't know if she had just done the polygraph thing and didn't know yet that it was a no-go. She thought it was a done deal. She's talking to Al about the polygraph, and let's start there.
Did you? So, are you going to send me the results of this poly or not? I'm not going to send them to anyone. I would like me to let you see. You need me to let me see them? I will let you go. So when I have this thing with Nancy Grace, because they're
Nancy Grace. She's the one giving her the polygraph.
going to be verifying the validity of it. They are going to have all this ready so that the public can hear it.
Public.
So I tried to talk to you first about it. You didn't want to talk to me. You didn't want to say anything. And then you want to agree with me, whatever. I get it. You're angry, hurt, got all this going on. I get it. Okay? So then I looked at it first. It's fine then. I'll do it this way.
This woman killed this man's son, and she's angry at him. Throughout these phone calls, as soon as he questions her on something, she starts screaming at him. She cares about what the public thinks. That's what so she can show the public. And it's interesting because all of these people who commit these kinds of crimes, in particular, care a lot about their perception. And not all of them, they don't all have like Letecia and Sarah Boone. They both cared, I can't believe you think I'm that kind of person. I'm not that kind of person. At one point, the FBI agent says to Letecia, I don't think you're a bad person. They always do that, and Letecia goes, I'm not, immediately. And she says at another point, I'm not that kind of person. I would never murder someone. And I think the Susan Smiths, the Chris Watts, the Casey Anthonys, the um, Scott Petersons, the ones who, like, they're ready to move on with their life already, but they don't want to look like that guy who left his wife or left his pregnant wife or isn't there for his kids, so he kills them. Annihilation is a better idea. That's a good look. I guess, obviously they figure all of these people think they can get away with it, or else they wouldn't do it. I mean, listen, we'll never completely understand it, thank God. As opposed to Letecia and Sarah, who they're driven by something else. It's not that they want to move on. They can't move on. They are angry, they are insecure, they are jealous, they are vindictive. That's what fueled them. Letecia felt neglected and taken for granted and angry and resentful, probably almost immediately. It may have not had anything to do with Al. Who knows? But if Letecia's going to do anything for anyone, you better pay. And same with Sarah Boone. She did everything for George. And she resented it. Don't do nice things for people if they're not really nice. And if you're going to be pissed about it, that's not helping them at all, obviously. Just a typical trying to get information from her. You listen to this.
Whole entire time. Okay? I have been adamant about this, about finding Mexican guy you told me about, the Mexican guy? He was dark skinned, and I say Mexican because I assumed. Tisha, you said she just said she. You mean he was dark skinned? I never said she, I said he. Okay. Tisha, you said she just was dark skinned. Told me about the Mexican guy? He was dark skinned, and I say Mexican because.
I don't know. I don't know what to do now. I mean, I don't even know what to say. This is an example of how Letecia can spin a yarn into absolutely nothing, and it takes forever. I have no idea what she's talking about here. I don't think anyone does, neither does she, but let's have a listen.
Deliver. I couldn't do it, Albert. Deliver papers for what? Tisha? When I went to Nevada, there was this pregnant lady. So I agreed to help the pregnant lady because she was really, really pregnant.
Let's listen to that again.
When I went to Nevada, there was this pregnant lady.
Let's listen one more time.
Tisha? When I went to Nevada, there was this pregnant lady. So I agreed to help the pregnant lady because she was really, really pregnant. She gets in the car, which is why Gannon was not in the front seat. He was in the back seat. You said, wait, you said when you went to Nevada? I went through Nevada. I'm like, what? You're in Nevada?
That's what I heard too.
Right. When I realized she's
still don't know
not
what.
pregnant. Once she gets in the car. Was this the same lady that was following you? I don't know if they were following us. I just know there was a car following us. When I get off, I turn where Harley gets the eyelashes done because I thought I would lose them. Then I saw a pregnant lady. She looked legit like 8 months pregnant.
I don't know why that matters. This turns into nothing. At first I was thinking, well, maybe she said she was pregnant so that she had an excuse to let the woman or give her a ride at all, or put her in the front seat, or put Gannon in the back. I don't know. I'll never know. She probably doesn't know. I'm thinking about this much more than she did.
What kind of car was following you? Because maybe this. He told you this 15 times. Oh, okay.
I told you this 15 times. This is a brand new story. How would she tell him 15 times? And this is the first.
It was a blue something. Like a blue little car, like a Cooper or something like this.
Would you mistake a Cooper for anything else? And how's a pregnant woman going to fit in a Cooper?
Okay, so like a blue, not red, right? Just
a real pregnant lady.
No, the red earlier in the day was nothing. It's already been checked out.
That was Quincy Brown.
All right. The reason I know that was been checked out is because I had somebody in Lorson Ranch do it. All right, just make sure I keep these cars straight. So there's the blue one, not the red one. See, no, don't get upset. Don't get upset. I'm just trying to get it straight. I'm not picking holes in your story. I'm just making sure we're on the blue car, okay? So now back to the pregnant lady that gets in the front seat. So the pregnant lady gets in the front seat, but she's not really pregnant. I don't know that she's not really pregnant, but she says she just needs a ride. I feel bad. She looked really, really pregnant, like 8 months. I said, I'm just listening. You know what? I'm not going to help if you're going to do this to me. Listen to him, please. I'm really doing this to be honest with you. Okay, I'm just listening.
The only thing that would be a proper answer to is the question, how pregnant did that lady look? This was 3 minutes of her just saying how pregnant this lady looked, who got in her car when she was in Nevada, basically. Or going, I don't know what she said. I don't know. Going through boxes. I have no idea. They just say anything, these people. It's just amazing to me. Like, I'm blown away every time. And I couldn't find it. I was looking for it because in one of these, when she's talking about Quincy Brown and Eduardo and this and that, she says something at one point when he's really pressing her and she's getting all, she's just throwing things out there. She says, it was a Mexican girl. And he's like, a Mexican girl? They always got to throw a Latina under the bus, you know? I mean, I assume she was taking a page out of Casey Anthony's book because no one wants to write Sherry Papini's book. That did not end well. But, you know, they try it.
Now you don't have any interest in. I do. I'll let them know as soon as we get off the phone. Go look for a 5'7" Mexican guy named Uncle Matt that changed his name to Quincy Brown that works for the home developer that his ID fell out of his pocket and he's out there with my son. I'll tell him all that. Because I found out who he is. Oh my God. Where's Gannon, Tisha? No. At least once every week or two. Every week or two, Gannon has a nosebleed.
That's another thing she has in common with Chandler Halderson is she explains away copious blood evidence with a nosebleed. Letecia's Google searches make Brian Walsh look like a super genius. You know, Brian, dear Google, how can I dispose of my wife's body? Walsh. My favorite ones are the ones not so much about blood spurt from an arterial bleed, but the ones when she's just now she's given up on trying to explain anything. She just wants out and to evade the law, and you know. And she is Googling face transplant near me. Couple things here. First of all, face transplant? Really? I'd rather go to prison. I mean, that's no fun. And what it just doesn't. What if they put a criminal's face on your face? Face transplants. And then what? You're just going to run in and. I'll take the number 9. Thanks. These calls go on and on. There are so many of them, and he calls her out on all of her bullshit, and it doesn't matter, and it's infuriating. I don't know how he had the patience for it, but I guess it was all he had. He knew she knew. He had to give it a shot. There are hundreds of hours of these calls, and they are infuriating, and the sound quality is terrible. There's a lot of crying and yelling, and all from her, really. Al asks some really good questions, and of course, they're met with silence or just nonsense. She likes to yada, yada, yada through details that she should be giving. Anyway, this one, he really sums it up, unfortunately.
You want us to get back together and be all intimate and, blah, 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 blah. But you keep fucking lying to me. 5 years of lies, and now my son's gone.
5 years of lies, and now my son's gone.